morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hopefully everybody has a clear, peaceful mind after the chanting. And it's good to see everybody. It's sort of like a festival of friends. We have Tarek I haven't seen for a while, and Mario, so it's great seeing some new people coming as well. And if you felt very comfortable in the chanting, maybe in a previous life, you know, your sutra leader, maybe something like that. Anything's possible. Right, Sheila? Yes, there you go. Call her Miss Giggles in the back. Okay, so I've taken a particular slant in this. First of all, if I could ask how many people got the handout via email? If you, more importantly, how many of you didn't? If you could put, oh. Okay, so I really can't slam people for not being prepared. What I would ask is that you email Sifu. If you don't know her email, we can put it up on the board. And let her know that you did not get the handout, so she can amend her Saturday morning email list to make sure that you do get it. So I will try and cover this subject as if you have not had an opportunity to cover it as much. But so one of the preparations I wanted to try and do, and when you get the handout, it'll give you a link. Buddhism in Every Step is on BLPA or blpusa.com, and there's all of these booklets that you see down below are available for a small donation or free for you to download. So we are trying to get you to take advantage of that great resource. And these are the works of Venerable Master Xing Yun. So that was basically one of the major focuses of this. But I wanted to approach Humanistic Buddhism really first from a personal practice point of view, and then we'll sort of expand it out. So I really wanted to talk about Buddhism, how it's integrated into our daily life. And the first thing we really wanted to focus on, and the first thing that Venerable Master Xing Yun talks about, is that Buddha was a human being. That he didn't come down on a flaming chariot, and there was no strikes of lightning. He was born like all of us. And he went through his life and lived as a human and was enlightened as a human. We do not revere Buddha as a god. We do not revere Buddha as someone who's going to directly intervene in our lives and make everything right. We, as we say in the poster downstairs for this class, we are the author of our own happiness. And why do we come here? We come here to be happier. I mean, that's what Buddhism is about. Buddhism is about being happier, being more at peace, and happiness in all of its components. Being more content with our lives, having the ability to share that happiness with those around us. Make the world a happier place. That's what we're here for, right? We don't hand out party balloons and hats, but we want to carry that spirit around with us. So when we take a look at the life of Buddha, I personally look at the Buddha's life as a parable. That the Buddha had three basic phases to his life. The first one, he lived as a prince, right? That's why he's called Sakyamuni Buddha. Sakya was the tribe, Muni means sage, so sage of the Sakya tribe. So he was born, and for those of you who are familiar with the story, he was born as a privileged prince. He had any want was completely met. He got to eat all different sorts of foods. He could be entertained, whatever he wanted to be entertained with. He had a variety of scholars with immediate access to him, learning the ways of the spiritual truths of his day. He had all of the wisdom that was available in his world available to him. And he had all the pleasures of the world available to him as well. Sort of sounds similar to what we enjoy. I mean, we can walk down the street and have Thai food or Vietnamese or Indian or Scottish. And I'm from England originally, so I don't brag too much about English food. Like Scottish food, I think it's mostly based on a dare, really. Put organs into a bag now, try and eat that. So, but we have this accessibility. If we want the ancient knowledge of all the sages of the world, okay, that used to take people taking boats around and dying to collect the ancient wisdom of the world, We put in Google, and we say Buddhism, and then they were ticked off that it doesn't load fast enough. Okay, we have that privileged life. But it wasn't enough for the Buddha. In the end, he caught a glimpse of the outside world and said, am I just here to entertain myself to death? Which is what we tend to look at in our lives, right? He with the most toys wins in the end. I'm not entertained enough. Oh, there's a commercial on. Oh, okay, we want to just, I'm sad. Well, I'll just go out and buy things, right? I'm bored. I'll go see a movie. Our world affords us the ability, in ways unforeseen, to entertain ourselves to death. But the Buddha said, well, I'm just going to be reborn, because that was the common understanding of his time. And I'm just going to entertain myself to death over and over and over again. So he left a section of his life, a portion of his life where it's about indulgence. And he went on to a path of asceticism, which is still common. You see sadhus in India still seeking liberation by denying anything having to do with sensual enjoyment, thinking that if they can divide themselves from sensual desire and attachment, that they would be liberated. And for 6 years he did that. It was said that one of his practices was eating as little as possible, right? Having 1 grain of rice a day. Until, it was said, he could die with a thought. He was on the verge of dying, and he said, well, if I die now, I'm just going to be reborn again, and to what end? So he sat down under the Bodhi tree and said, I'm not moving until I figure this out. And he saw the middle way. He saw a way other than sensual indulgence and asceticism. He saw a middle way. But he saw it as a human. And so the 3 phases of his life represent the 3 realities that we have to choose from. So, as a result, the Buddha gave his first discourse. When he got up, he went down to find his 2 meditative teachers, Alana Kalana, and I forget the other one, but they had both died. So he went to his traveling buddies, the 5 monks that he travels with, and he went to Varanasi in the deer park, and he said, okay guys, I got something to tell you. I think I've got it. I think, I know you walked away because I started to eat again, but, I'm okay now. I know I clean myself, and that's against the rules, but I think I've got this. I think I have something to share with you. And when he first sat them down, the first discourse, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the turning of the wheel of the Dharma, for the first time, he started it off with this.
This is what I have heard.
Thank you. This is what I have heard. At one time, the world-honored one was staying in Varanasi in Isipata, a deer park. At that time, the world-honored one addressed the group of 5 monks, saying, Bhikkhus, there are 2 extremes that a monk should avoid. What are the 2? The first is the devotion to sensual desire and the pleasure resulting from sensual desire. Such devotion is base, pedestrian, worldly, ignoble, and unbeneficial. The second is devotion to harsh austerity. Such devotion is painful, ignoble, and unbeneficial. By not following either of these extremes, the Tathagata has realized the middle path, the middle way, that gives rise to seeing and understanding. This seeing and understanding are at the basis of peace, knowledge, full awakening, and nirvana.
Thank you, Andy. So he didn't start off talking about, he didn't sit down the 5 monks and say, let's talk about emptiness and non-self and dependent origination. I mean, he certainly talked about that, but that wasn't his primary focus. His primary focus was, as a human being, when we're in this world, we can either reject it and be focused on that rejection, harsh austerity, turning down, denying ourselves from life, thinking that that's right. Or we can dive into it and indulge, thinking that's the way to happiness. But in the end, it's this middle path between. That living in the world without being consumed by it, the having a peace and being able to practice, being able to live in happiness in the present moment. So, it also points to the truth that he's not asking you to fly up into heaven. He's asking you to focus on your life. He's saying, here's the foundation. Here's where you begin. You begin with your life. You begin with the stuff in your life. So when Venerable Master Xing Yun talks about what are the characteristics of humanistic Buddhism, it's a reaching out. But I don't want to start this class in talking about humanistic Buddhism is only about going out and doing good things in the world. It's not only about that. If it's not done with a proper purpose, with a proper intention, if it's not done as part of a practice, it doesn't have a proper foundation. And so humanistic Buddhism has to start with applying Buddhism in a practical, applied fashion in your lives. It's not a highfalutin woo-woo philosophy. There's no laser, there's no smoke bombs. It's up to you. It's up to you with your application of your life. So Venerable Master Xing Yun talks about 6 characteristics. And I think that these are not only goals that we should strive towards, but I think they're also signposts along the way that we should be mindful of our lives and look and see if we are manifesting these characteristics in our practice. So, for those of you who have your handouts, follow along. For the majority that don't, that's fine. So, the first one is that human life is the arena of practice. That, again, it's in your everyday existence, the things that you face, from the moment that you wake up, even before then, the dreams that you have, perhaps. That how you treat the world, how you're faced with things. Are we constantly judging? Are we constantly looking at things? But it's within our life. It's not enough to have a philosophical complacency about things and then go out and act however we might. It's taking that every step you take, having this in your mind. And why should we? Why should we be mindful? Why should we practice? Because it's a practice of joy. It's a practice of happiness. So we make a choice whether we want to be happy or not. And be conscious of how we are seeking that happiness. Number 2, the Dharma applies not only to philosophical, but to a daily life. Okay, so we don't pull out of the parking lot here and cut people off and give them the finger and, okay, go home and yell at our wife because there's a honey-do list, or, you know, we don't go and phone our boss and say, I want a raise right away and be demanding. We carry this with us. So after a chanting service, if you saw everybody come and take off their robes in the front lobby and say, okay, who's going to barbecue with me? You may say, well, it's hypocritical, right? So there's always that thing in your life. And harmony, to me, is your outer life in concert, in harmony with your inner values. And you think of your life, you feel conflicted, don't you, when you're doing something that's in conflict with your deepest values. Over and over again, if you check yourself, when you find anxiety, for example, if you yell at your kids because you're angry, so it makes sense to yell at them. Do you feel bad about it afterwards? Sure you do. And why? Because you love your kids and you've acted out with anger. The behavior and the value are not in harmony. So if we have a Buddhist practice, and that is our deepest belief, if we have faith, remember that Venerable Man Yi started off with the 3 phases of practice. The first one was, anybody remember? Faith. The second one was vow, and the third one was practice. So one builds upon the other. And for those who might be confused about the term faith, faith in the West tends to be belief in something unseen. Belief in something not in direct evidence. So you just believe in it hard enough and trust that it's true. And it's the exact opposite in Buddhism. In Buddhism, faith is something that you have investigated, something you are, not that you've been told, not because it's just tradition, not even because I or Venerable Manny stand up here and say it's so, that you've thought about it and applied to your life and it makes sense, and most of all it works. It brings you happiness in a real sense. The third characteristic is altruism, that it's a central attitude, that you think beyond your own needs, that you have empathy and equanimity, that you think of the concerns of not only of you, but of those around you, in terms of Buddhism, and all sentient beings. The fact that if it's just about you, then you expect the world to be all just about you. And guess what? You're not the center of the universe. Late breaking news, you're not the center of the universe. Scott just got married. Are you the center of the universe anymore? No. No. There was a great part, actually. Scott Honeymooner, he was, for those of you who saw the wedding blessing, had another ceremony which I was pleased to attend. And there was a great line in it. Someone who, Barbara and him were up at the head table, and she said, Barbara, could you put your hand up on the table? And she did so. And then, Scott, could you put your hand up put it on top of hers? And I thought it was a beautiful moment until the next line came when he said, and Scott, that'll be the last time you have the upper hand. So, the fourth characteristic is joyfulness. 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 Well, when we see people chanting, when we see people sitting silently in meditation, do they look joyful? Right? A lot of people will look at Buddhists in practice and say, they seem a very somber lot. Okay, but if Buddhism is not done with joy, if there's not a half smile in your heart, if you are not joyful that you are on the right path to happiness, that you do not see signs of increasing happiness and peace in your heart, then it's not worth doing. Maybe Buddhism isn't right for you. Because in the end, it has to work. But while you're there, walk this path with joy. It should not be a sacrifice. It should be an investment. Timelessness, or timeliness, as Greg was right to point out to me in our discussion before the class. I wrote down timelessness because I don't think we want to pick and choose when it's the right time to practice. I'm at work now. I don't have time to practice. I'll practice later when I'm not so busy. But also timeliness. When is it a time to apply an individual teaching? When is it time to focus? When should I reach out to someone? When should I help? When is the Dharma going to be helpful with this person at this time? So having it applied properly. And last, universality. Okay, universality that it applies everywhere. It's for all sentient beings without discrimination. We don't turn to people and say, you're not worthy of the Dharma. We see that all people, if you see an angry person, guess what? You've probably been angry too. If we look at people and have in our heart, when they're going through struggle times, perhaps they're making the wrong decisions. Maybe we've been that person, either in this life, or at least we can empathize with their situation. Also in the handout, there's a quote, and I'll just quickly read it, from the Valamakirti Nirdesha Sutra, which I've sort of been talking. He's this towering figure in the sutra, but he's a layperson. He's not a monk. And the quote is this: a bodhisattva wins the Pure Land through practice, solely for the benefit of sentient beings. For example, a man can build palaces and houses on a vacant ground without difficulty, but he will fail if he attempts to build them in empty space. So a bodhisattva, in order to bring living beings to perfection, seeks the Buddha land which cannot be sought in empty space. And the way I look at it is, if you're trying to build a practice from a purely philosophical point of view, or a belief system, you're trying to build a house in empty space. It has to have a foundation in practice. It has to have a foundation in what you actually do. Because what we do is our karma, right? What is karma? Anybody know the definition of it? It's an action. What kind of action? Pardon me? Intentional. It's an intentional act. So what we do, we have to take responsibility for. Oh, I just reacted. Oh, I was drunk, I just did that. You're still responsible for it. You don't walk into court and say, I killed that family when I was driving because I was drunk. So, free pass? Doesn't quite work that way. Okay. Also, when we look at several teachings, when we talk about precepts, okay, and when we talk about precepts, it's sila, and it's morality. And everybody says, oh, religion, morality, the Ten Commandments. I'm confined by these rules. Well, morality is meant to be liberating in Buddhism. When we talk about no killing, it's phrased that way because guess what? Buddha wants you to stop killing things. Okay, he says just stop killing things, just hold on a second. But then from there, you apply it as if you say, I value all life. Life is sacred. I am an extension. I am connected to all life and should be holding value to it. You see the difference? One, you're thinking of restrictive, and the other one, you're thinking of liberating. Okay, it's the same thing with no lying. Okay, when you're lying, who do you lie for? Yourself. You think about it. Almost every lie is out there to protect yourself. When we react, in most cases, we're reacting in defense of us, aren't we? And we learn it. Billy, did you spill the milk? Nope. Nope. Wasn't me. Right? And we sort of say, well, maybe we can get away with that. So I can go through all of the precepts, but we'll move on to also the 4 immeasurable attitudes. And the 4 attitudes that we apply to our life. Okay, it's not enough to say it's important to have loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. It's not enough to say these are important. Are you applying them? And are you applying them with equanimity? Are you applying them to all? Oh, I like this person. I don't like this person. I'm going to be kind to this person because they deserve it. But I'm not going to be kind to this person because they still owe me money. Do you see all people as worthy of compassion? And again, one of the 4 immeasurable attitudes is joy. Again and again, everybody accuses Buddhism of being about suffering. It's about joy. It's about happiness. Also, the 6 perfections. Andy, can you help me?
Yeah.
So when we talk about the 6 perfections, these act, in Mahayana Buddhism, they act like the Eightfold Path. These are 3 areas, when investigated and applied to your life, will bring you happiness, will bring you closer to your true nature. So, sort of quiz, we're the 2nd level. What's the first perfection, the first paramita? Yeah, sorry? Pardon me?
Generosity.
Generosity. So, dana, or generosity, or giving, the perfection of giving. Okay, the 2nd one is?
Morality.
Morality, sila. Okay, the morality, how we govern our lives. The 3rd one is diligence. Everybody has the first 2. Everybody always remembers the first 2. Okay, so the 3rd one is diligence, or virya. And then patience, shanti, patience. And then 4th, pardon me? Right, the perfection of meditation, of mindfulness. And then 6th,
Wisdom,
wisdom.
also
Of
known
wisdom.
as knowing gooder.
Knowing gooder, be much gooderer.
Yeah.
So when we take a look at these, do all of these apply to human life? Can you imagine a day that you go through that these can't benefit you and those around you? Is anyone perfected any one of these attitudes in your life? So knowing that this will make you happier, knowing that this will make you more peaceful, knowing that this will help those around you, is it not make sense to apply these to your life? And it's actually said, where's the marker? Ah, there it is, sorry. Let's see. Oh, look at that pop-down marker. It's actually said that in the end, these 5 serve to generate wisdom. All of them have a part to play. But in the end, it's about seeing the world the way it really is. And being able to be part of that world as you really are. Okay. And the last one that I just had on the list here, because we're sort of getting close to time, and we have discussion 12 to 12:30, right? Okay. Is investigation of causes, conditions, and consequence as they apply to our world and our life in it. So we should be thinking about these things, that we're not thinking of ourselves as separate, as apart from this world. Because when you think about it, a lot of the struggles in your life have to do with the alternate kind of thinking. If you think of yourself as special, as separate, that everything else is out there and I'm in here, and this is what I need from out there for me to be happy. If that's your attitude, I can guarantee you, you may be amused, but you will not be happy in the end. It all has an end. And everybody thinks, well, you know, when you were young, did you think, well, when I become a teenager, I'll get rid of my kids' suffering, right? I'll be able to do what I want. When you're a teenager, you go, oh, I can hardly wait to be a grown-up, have my own car and my apartment, and you know, I'll get rid of teenager suffering. But then you realize you've got adult suffering. And you say, okay, but when I have kids, I'll have a whole family, community. And for those of us that have kids, yes, there's joy, but there's a lot of other stuff too. You say, when the kids move out, I'll get rid of parent suffering. Well, guess what? You end up with living alone suffering. So it just transforms. We do not lose it at any time. And nor, if you look back at it, is there a resting point. When did you stop becoming a child and start becoming a teenager? When did you stop becoming a teenager and started becoming an adult? There is no time. Because we are a process. We are constantly going. And when the Buddha referred to himself, he referred to himself as Tathagata. The Tathagata, he calls himself. And in that word, there's a lesson. Does anybody know what Tathagata means?